Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make banana pudding. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. I've gotten a lot of requests for banana pudding, so I decided to finally make it happen, and I am sharing a completely from scratch recipe that I think you are going to absolutely love. We're going to start by making a homemade vanilla pudding. Now this is mostly going to be done on the stovetop, so you are going to need a medium-sized saucepan, and you want one that has a nice heavy bottom, otherwise you can end up ruining your pudding by accidentally cooking your eggs. So in this saucepan we are going to combine 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, 1/4 cup of cornstarch, and just a half teaspoon of salt, and we'll whisk these together so they're nicely combined. Now in a large measuring cup, I'm going to be combining 1.5 cups of whole milk and 1.5 cups of heavy cream. You're also going to need 4 large egg yolks. Now to break the eggs, I just like to crack that shell and then just pass the yolk back and forth until the white has fallen out. And then we have our yolk. We'll add that in with our milk and cream. What I should have done is I should have put this in a clean dish, and then I could have saved the egg whites to make meringue or something else later on. Once you have 4 egg yolks, we're going to whisk the cream and milk and egg yolks together until the yolks are nicely broken up and everything is nicely combined here. Then we'll slowly pour this into our dry ingredients while whisking. And I like to do this slowly, that way everything gets nicely incorporated and we don't have any dry lumps. Once you've added about 1/4 of the liquid mixture, you can move a little bit faster and add everything. All right, let's take this over to the stovetop where we're going to place it just below medium heat. Now to keep the eggs in this pudding from cooking, you're going to want to stir it pretty much constantly, and don't turn up the heat too high, otherwise you'll cook your eggs. It's going to take about 10 to 15 minutes, possibly even a little bit longer, but we're going to just continue to stir this until the pudding begins to thicken. You may even notice that it's beginning to bubble, but what you are looking for is when you're whisking that, the whisk should be leaving a nice trail through the pudding. Keep in mind that the pudding is going to thicken up more as it cools, but for right now this is looking perfect, and I'm just going to show you one other trick to make sure it is ready. Just go ahead and dip a spoon in there. See how the back of the spoon is completely coated with the pudding? If I drag my finger through it, it leaves a nice distinct trail. This is perfect, so you want to take it off of the heat immediately. Now, even though we've done a beautiful job with the pudding, if I do say so myself, we're still going to want to pour this into a heat-proof bowl through a fine mesh strainer. I'm using my spatula to just kind of gently help work the pudding through the strainer, but I'm not really pressing it through because I don't want any little cooked bits of egg or any lumps of cornstarch to make their way through with the good stuff. As you can see, we did catch some impurities. We don't want those in our pudding, so we can just get rid of that. Into this beautiful pudding, we are going to add 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and we're just going to add 1 tablespoon at a time, whisking until that butter is nicely melted before adding the next tablespoon. And of course, we want this to be a vanilla pudding, so we're going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. The pudding is pretty much finished, it just needs to cool. Now, pudding is prone to forming a skin over it, so I'm going to let it cool for about 15 minutes, just stirring periodically. And then I'm going to take a piece of plastic wrap and I'm going to press that directly against the surface of the pudding. This is going to keep it from forming a thick skin. I'll pop this in the fridge where it will continue to cool for about 30 minutes or until it's no longer warm before we go any further. For today's recipe, of course, we are going to be making a homemade whipped cream, so we can prepare that once your pudding has cooled. Now for this, we are going to need 3 cups of heavy whipping cream, add 1 cup of powdered sugar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and next you are going to want to use an electric mixer to beat everything together until you have a thick, fluffy whipped cream. Now you could save yourself a little bit of an arm workout and use a stand mixer, but today I'm just going to be using an electric mixer. Okay, let's take a peek. I want to show you exactly how your whipped cream should look when it's done. So my pudding has cooled and my whipped cream is ready. So I'm going to take that from the fridge and of course remove that plastic wrap. We don't need that anymore. Now the pudding might have solidified a little bit, so I like to stir it and make it nice and smooth before I add the whipped cream. Let's add half of this whipped cream into our pudding and just use a spatula to stir everything together until it's completely combined. The other half we're going to reserve for topping off our banana pudding, so we don't need that just yet. I find that I normally need about 2 to 3 bananas for banana pudding, and I'm going to cut these into slices that are about 1/8 inch thick. So one of the biggest problems with banana pudding is the bananas have a tendency to oxidize, which means they begin to turn brown. To prevent this, I like to take a little bit of lemon juice and I just lightly brush every slice of banana with a little bit of that lemon juice. You don't want to go overboard. And then I'm going to brush the other side as well, but I'll do that right before adding it to the pudding. So we're just about ready to assemble, but of course you need a nice baking dish. I'm going to be using a 2.5 quart baking dish for this recipe. We are also going to be needing some vanilla wafers, and of course you can use store-bought, but today I am using my homemade vanilla wafers and I just shared a recipe for those. So go ahead and make sure you make yourself a batch. You'll need 40 vanilla cookies for this recipe. So let's start assembly. Take a little bit of your pudding and just layer that over the bottom of your baking dish. Grab your vanilla wafers and we're going to place 20 of them across the bottom of the dish in nice even rows. Now, of course, we need your bananas, and as I mentioned, you just want to briefly brush the other side with a little bit of that lemon juice. You could use lime juice instead, and place a banana slice on top of each cookie. Now, half of your pudding needs to go over those cookies. Just use a spoon to spread that out in a nice even layer. And of course you need 20 more vanilla cookies because we're doing a second layer. And I usually put these in upside down and then just gently nestle them into the pudding. And then of course more lemon juice brushed banana slices. If your slices are really small, you can just add 2 or even 3 to each cookie. Add the rest of your pudding and spread that nicely over. For the whipped cream, you could certainly nicely pipe that on top of the banana pudding, but I'm just going to make a nice pillowy surface on top of everything. Now, banana pudding needs to sit for a couple hours, but also not too long before you can eat it. You want those cookies to soften up a little bit and you want the pudding to absorb that banana flavor. So I'm just going to set this in the fridge and cover it and let it sit for about 4 hours. After it's had time to sit, I'm going to take a couple of vanilla wafers, about 5 or 6, and just roughly break them over the surface of the whipped cream. For a final touch, I like to take a quality dark chocolate bar and then just use a potato peeler to make pretty little chocolate curls and flakes all over the top of that banana pudding. And that is how you make perfect, homemade, completely from scratch banana pudding. I hope you guys enjoyed today's recipe, and if you try this one out, please let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. That's really good.